Yo, what up? This is B-Cide here. And, when I was younger, I always thought there was going to be this one moment that changed everything. One person was going to hear my music, one demo was going to get into the right hands, somebody was going to discover me, put me on a label, and then boom, there's your big break. And that's how I thought the music business worked. And back then you would hear crazy stories about people getting discovered in all kinds of crazy ways. The gym class heroes got discovered through mp3.com, and they're from New York, not even that far away from where I'm from. And so I'm sitting in Utica thinking, why couldn't that happen to me? Maybe somebody hears my music, maybe the right A&R gets my demo, maybe somebody sees my me perform, and suddenly everything changes. And as I got older and learned more about the music business, my idea of a big break started changing. And I eventually realized, hold up, wait a minute. I don't necessarily want a record deal, because now I understand what a record deal can actually mean. Now, here's the thing, it's like, who owns the masters? How much money is the label taking? What kind of rights am I giving up? What kind of control do I actually have? So then my thinking became, okay, I don't want a record deal. I want distribution. Okay, I want to own the label. That's what it's about. I want to own all the music. I want somebody to help me distribute it. But even then, that taught me another lesson. You still need a business behind it. You still need numbers. You need sales. You need money. You need proof that what you're doing actually works. And back then, if you're selling thousands of CDs out of your trunk, how do you prove that to people? You can tell somebody all day what you've sold and how many you've sold, but that's different from putting concrete numbers in front of them. So over the years, my definition of the opportunity I was waiting for kept changing. And there were definitely moments where I thought, holy shit, maybe this is it. My friend DJ Pimp was one of my biggest supporters. He had connections in the music industry, and there were times when he'd introduce me to A&R people and try and get my music in front of the right people. At one point, I talked with an A&R from Shady Records, and obviously when something like that happens, you think about what actually could become. And then you realize maybe you're not what they're looking for. Sometimes they're looking for the next version of somebody who's already successful. They're not necessarily looking for the first version of you. And then I get into Murder Dog magazine, and that was huge to me. That was something that I wanted since I became a rapper. But a couple magazine appearances don't magically create a career. You realize that somebody being in a magazine month after month after month is completely different from appearing a couple times. Then I signed with DJ King Assassin, one of Tupac's original producers. And then I'm thinking, holy shit, maybe this is finally going to happen. And then a few months later, the situation fell apart. And he went his way, I went mine, and I kept on going. Now, I don't look at any of those things as failures. They happened, they're part of my story. I'm glad that they happened. But none of them turned out to be this magical moment where suddenly I made it. And I think that's because I've finally realized something. I don't really believe in the big break anymore. At least not the way that I used to. Because most of the time when somebody looks like they get a big break, you're only seeing the moment where everybody else finally noticed them. You're not seeing everything that happened before it. Look at somebody like Jelly Roll, for instance, okay? Somebody might discover him today, and when, he becomes this gigantic artist, and where the hell did this guy come from? He didn't come from nowhere, that's for sure. He had been making music for years. He had been building. He had been putting himself out in front of people. And then eventually enough things came together that the rest of the world finally noticed. Now, from the outside, that looks like a big break. But from the inside, that's years and years and years of work and grind. And that's what I've started understanding about my own career. Small things compound. One person buying something might not seem like a big deal, but you can't get 10 customers without getting one first. You can't get 100 without getting 10. One person signing up for my street team might sound small, but that one person means everything, because now there's one, then there's another, and another, and the same thing happened with TikTok. I didn't go live one day and suddenly have some gigantic audience, I've gone back day after day after day. And every time I do it, I'm putting myself out in front of people again. Somebody new might find me today. Somebody who found me yesterday might come back. Somebody who's been watching for months might tell somebody else. That's how shit grows. And I've seen this throughout my entire career. There's people I still talk to today who bought Upstate Madness, Welcome to Utica from me in 2003. They still have the CD. They followed what I've done over all these years. Somebody else, might have discovered me through Monster, my newest album. And to them, that might be the beginning. And that's fucking cool because, everybody enters the story somewhere. And eventually those people start meeting each other. Somebody starts saying, oh, I've got Monster. And somebody goes, man, I've got Upstate Madness. And now they're talking. Now they're comparing stories. Now you've got community. And none of that came from one gigantic moment. It came from thousands of little ones. And that's also why I look at the music business completely differently today. Years ago, you needed somebody to put you into the machine. Today, I can release music from my house. I can distribute it around the world. I can manufacture physical products. I can sell directly to people. I can talk directly to the people who support me. And if it gets big enough that I need help fulfilling something, then I can find somebody to help with that part. That's much more interesting to me. It's more mom and pop. It's more personal. It's more authentic. And more importantly, I'm building it. I'm not sitting around waiting for somebody to come save me, Now, could something happen huge tomorrow? Yeah, of course. Maybe one of these videos take off. Maybe something happens on TikTok. Maybe a song reaches the right person. Maybe somebody writes a story about what I'm doing. I don't fucking know what the hell's going on. That's the point. I can't control it. But what I can control is whether I'm here tomorrow. What I can control is whether I make another video, whether I go live again, whether I make another song, whether I send another email, whether I put another idea into the world, For years, I thought the goal was to get discovered. And today, I think the goal is to make yourself discoverable. Put yourself out there. Give people something to discover and keep doing it. Because opportunities don't usually show up when you're sitting around waiting for them. You have to put yourself in a position where opportunities can find you. And today making it looks completely different to me. Making it isn't somebody handing me a contract. It's everything I'm building, eventually working all together. The music, the books, the community, the business, the content, all of it, until everything eventually is financially sustainable enough that I can live the life that I'm trying to build. And if I get there, I honestly don't know if I'll be able to point to a particular day and say, that's the day when I made it. I'll probably look backwards and see 10,000 little things that got me there. And maybe someday somebody else will look at it and say, damn, B-Cide finally got his big break. And I'll laugh because I'll know there wasn't just one. There were thousands of them. I still want big opportunities. I'm just not waiting for one to save me anymore. So I'm just going to keep building, slow and steady. The turtle might take a while, but that motherfucker is still moving. And after all these years, so am I. Stay strong, stay wicked. It's B-Cide. Like, subscribe, share. Peace out.